Okay, hello everyone. Youth and Family Services is so excited to announce the beginning of Parent Workshop series. And this series will focus on ASL classes, and it's twice a month. For deaf and hearing parents both. So we will touch on many different topics, and they're all going to be based on deafness. And our first workshop will be tonight. So Children's Mental Health by Noelle and Yu Yi. And they are both workers at DCS and Behavioral Health Services in our department. And this parent workshop series supports the CSUN program. So thank you guys for being here. And are you ready to take over? Okay, we'll turn it over to you. We'll do a screen share and spotlight. Okay, I see us. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here this evening. And I want to explain about child mental health. But first, let me introduce myself and go to the next screen. Hold on. Hello. Okay. So my name is Noelle King, and I am a behavioral health therapist and art therapist. And I am a Korean American. And I go by pronouns she and her. I was adopted by deaf parents. When I was a child, I was 1 and 5 months. And I was from Little Rock, Arkansas. That's where I grew up. And I have so that's just some background about me. I did grow up with deaf parents, and ASL is my first language that I've learned and used. And then English is my second language. I also went to school, and I can explain my schooling as well. But I was the only student in a hearing school. And so that's a little bit about my background. And let me turn it over to Yui so she can introduce herself as well. Hi there. My name is Yui Gao, and my name is Asian. And so I am from China. I was born in China, and 2017, I moved to America to study as an international student. So I was at Gallaudet University for mental health services as a clinician. I'm in my grad studies program. So I graduate this year, which is great. And I am in DCS, Community Services, as a behavioral health intern. I've been here for about 6 months. I am from Hefei, Anhui province in China, and it's just a small town by Shanghai. And so I grew up in oral and sign language both. And I started from the time I was 2 doing different lip reading and oral exercises. And then in kindergarten, I went to a hearing school. And then I went to, all through my university background, I've been mainstreamed. And but I did not have an interpreter. I didn't have captioning. I didn't have services. I had to lip read and learn in that way. So that's my background. And so then I graduated, came to America, studied for my grad program, and I've been here since then. Oh, I forgot to add too, I know 4 languages: Chinese Sign Language, English, and then ASL, American Sign Language. My parents are deaf, but they didn't they grew up learning sign language later. So that's about me. Okay, great. Noel. So we'll go ahead and go through the lecture, but please stop me. Feel free if you don't understand anything or want clarification. I'm happy to take your questions during, and we'll also be monitoring the chat. Great. So every second you spend with your child matters, because these seconds may be the most important difference in your child's life. Okay, so these are some statistics I wanted to share with you. And often deaf children, they grow up struggling to communicate with their own family, often are 4 times more likely to be affected by mental health, more so than other deaf children who have, few or no problems communicating with their family members. And about 41% research shows that deaf individuals who have struggled to communicate with their family, it gives them added stress and just overall prejudice, and can cause or contribute to suicidal depression, substance abuse, or violent behavior in some cases. Okay, so I'll show you a video clip now. If it works. That's a sec. Okay, tech difficulties, one moment. It's not working. Hold on. Tech support, one sec. Okay, so it's screen share. Hold on. I'll pause for a moment. Okay, I think that should work. Mhm. Okay. So as you saw with the captions, expressions, body movement, that's part of American Sign Language. And is that the syntax? What do you guys think? True or false? You can actually write in the chat. Is that true or false? What do you think? Louise says true. Delphina, true. You're right. It is true. So we wanted to, hearing people may have different tone, inclination, just intonation. They might be faster or speak softer, and that translates to their emotions. So same with sign language, you'll show that on your face if you look sad. That's how we express our emotions, is through facial expressions and body movement. Noelle, yes. I want to add on to that too. It's just very important to have facial expressions like eyebrows up, eyebrows down. You go, yeah, or yeah, yes. So all of those are different ways or versions of the same sign that you can sign, and it means different things as well. So before I keep going, I want to emphasize, like you just saw from that video about language deprivation, I want you to really think about how that relates to this discussion as UE goes ahead. So if you want to just take a minute and read the slide, I'll wait. Okay, has everyone read it okay? So first, with early language deprivation, parents who are not communicating and not corresponding that cognitive connection means that they're not developing. That's how you, if it's Apple or phone or items, you see that item, you hear it, and then you attribute that. So if you don't have language as well, you have isolation. You don't have anyone to communicate or build relationships with. And so you often feel isolated. You feel, alone and remote.
And let's say, for instance, if the children's language isn't developing, that means they have less opportunity. There's less transparency. Their parents are their first teacher, really. And so they need to socialize. And really, that's through the family. And they socialize with the family, and then they know how to socialize with other people. If they don't learn how to socialize, say for instance, like saying sorry, thank you, they will miss those markers, and not use them with other people if it's not used with the family. Like having empathy, you really want to emphasize all of that, really with like socializing. It helps them develop their social skills when you do that, like I just mentioned earlier, like saying sorry and thank you and hello. Maybe they just don't know, how and when to use that language. Like self-regulation, like say for instance, they're frustrated and they're having a hard time, they don't know how to self-regulate themselves. So it can be difficult from them, but they learn how to regulate through their parents, and socializing with them and learning how to regulate instead of just holding it in. And then problem solving also is another skill. And they learn that from their parents as well and interacting with them. So they go, oh, I communicate this way with my parents. Okay, then I'll know, socially I can communicate this way as well. It helps them with their cognitive development and so forth. Like I said, communication helps build relationships and helps you to become closer to people, closer to your siblings, closer to your peers. It's helpful to be able to build relationships. Then once you build your relationships with your family, you can build them with your friends. Let's say for example, they need to learn how to communicate with people so that when they go to the bank, they can communicate with the staff and just to be able to interact overall. And they learn that from the family. Does anybody have anything to add? Yes, Noelle, I do have something to add. Children's brains, they're very malleable, they're still learning and it's amazing. It's a critical time, actually. You want to really expose as much language as you possibly can. It really doesn't matter how old they are. If they're an infant, I mean, they're constantly, I mean, they're really relying on their eyesight and just being able to learn and pick up everything. Their social skills, communication skills, their intellectual skills, their emotional intelligence. All of that is very important. So, the children do have to develop that. And so I will show you a video. It shows you all about language, exposure, and deprivation. You can gesture at home, use your facial expressions, your body language. And when they see that, they do pick it up. I mean, kids are really smart. You definitely want to take advantage of that time and go ahead and expose them to language and give them that language access and just build that relationship with your child, so it's easier for them, to use those skills with their friends, and as far as like building relationships with their partner in the future as well. If they don't have any kind of language exposure, I mean, how are they going to be able to develop their social skills? If they don't have social skills, if they don't have empathy, if they don't have that exposure, they become isolated. They don't know how to explain their feelings, they don't understand, they don't know how to communicate, because with ASL, it's just really important to have that exposure. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide. So like misunderstanding. I mean, sometimes children they miss their language access. It's really going to impact them. It doesn't mean that all deaf people experience that, but it's really important that they get full language access. If they don't have any language access, they will have depression, anxiety, low self-esteem. They're not going to be confident. They're going to struggle with their identity. They're going to wonder if they're hearing, deaf, hard of hearing. So they're going to have a confused identity, and then they'll also stress too. They'll wonder about their parents, like, oh, I can't communicate with my parents. And then they become overwhelmed. And then, isolating themselves or being lonely, deaf people, are not all together, so they can become very isolated. And there can be shame also, because people have different perspectives on deaf people. Like there's Chinese perspective. Like some people think that it's bad or think that it's weak that you're deaf. So I've talked to several people and we kind of had the same experience that there was shame. It just depends on the cultural perspective. There's anger, if they don't know how to communicate and they're missing things, and there's no self-regulation. They get angry really easy and they become out of control and upset and frustrated. I mean, definitely, like if they're in school, let's say that they're in a mainstream school and they're in a classroom with all hearing students, and it's really easy for them to communicate and they want to communicate. That's where the frustration lies. Social competence is also very important, and a sense of independence. Like, I can do this, I can do it myself. They might not feel that way. They might feel like they have to depend on other people, and a loss of self-reliance. Socially, they feel like maybe they can't develop. Does anybody want to add anything? Noelle says yes. So yes, so she just mentioned all of you. We just mentioned all of those things. It doesn't mean that they're going to experience all of them. They might just experience a couple of them. If your children don't have full access to communicate at home and they're not involved with the family at all, that means that they're high risk, for having some mental illnesses. And it's one of those listed, two or maybe more. It just kind of depends on their background, their experience. I really do just encourage all of you parents to learn sign language and communicate with your children, because that means there'll be less risk for mental illness. And also I want to add too that they won't be able to express themselves with their parents, and so they'll just feel like they're not going to be able to talk to anybody. So it's really important that you become close with your children so that your children, feel comfortable expressing themselves. Okay, now I'm just wondering, so do any of you know what depression looks like? Can you give me an example of what depression looks like? Go ahead and type it in the chat box. Yeah, go ahead and type it in the chat box. Let's check it out. Sad, angry, yes. Anything else? Anybody else have anything? Low self-esteem. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay, Yui, go ahead. So yeah, with depression, I mean, it's not easy to look at somebody, identify that they're depressed. I mean, that's not always the case. And it's not always the case that they want to commit suicide. I mean, they could become very down, and sometimes they could blame themselves. They have low self-esteem, no confidence. They also may feel shame, and they might feel sadness. They might feel like they can't do better, and they have loss of hope. And Noel says, yes, I agree. Yes, tired. Yes, you're right. Yes, that's true. I mean, I'm sure you all have experienced, including myself, during this, pandemic and everybody's kind of tired. We're all isolated. So, yeah, you may also experience depression, in children as well. But you have to realize that it looks a little bit different for children. Sometimes they might not say that they're sad when they are, but maybe just by observing their behavior, you can identify. They might just show that they're tired. Yes, avoidance. Yes, that is another one as well. Low energy, sadness, irritability. They want to isolate themselves. Maybe they'll withdraw themselves as well, sleep all day, or even stay up all night. They might eat too much or not enough, either or. They might not play as much with their friends, or maybe they're just not interested in their friends anymore. So just like observing their behavior. Yui is also saying that, they've lost hope maybe. Maybe they used to like to draw, but now they don't like it anymore, so that is also a symptom of depression. And Noelle is saying, there's also other ones as well. We're just touching on a few things. Okay, let's have a discussion about emotional intelligence. I'm wondering, have you heard of that before? Anyone? Yes, no. Okay. All right. Okay, so emotional intelligence. Have you also heard of like the IQ? IQ is like part of the brain, and so we'll leave that. So now we're going to focus more on emotional intelligence, and I'll expand on that a little bit here as well. So emotional intelligence, like what is that? So it's self-awareness, you know, I'm able to experience empathy, I have motivation, I'm able to communicate, I can share my feelings, I'm able to self-regulate my moods, and I'm able to go ahead and interact, skillfully just with just a big group of with a general group of people, so empathy and feeling, all of it kind of works together. So, I mean, there's a whole gamma of emotions. There's lots of different ones. If you look at this chart, if you can see all the variety of emotions on this chart. There's anger, rage, grief, scared, sadness, excited. There's all sorts of emotions on this chart. Yes, right. There's a whole variety. Exactly. There's like easy ones to recognize, like mad, sad, and happy. But that's not it. There are a lot more. There's quite a few. So you got to imagine your deaf child doesn't have language access, but you can recognize that they're mad. You can tell by their face, or if they're sad, they're frowning, and if they're happy, they're smiling. That's easy to notice. But how do you explain the other emotions? Like I'm nervous, I'm excited, um, or I have anxiety and I'm scared, disappointed, mad, stressed, frustrated. So there's a whole gamut. There's a huge range, and there's a gray area as well. And there's no communication, then the child might only see the three emotions. And so that really does impact them growing up. They struggle with being able to express themselves, not only with their family, with their friends, their workplace. They don't really have the language to express themselves. So that's why it's very important to have language exposure. And then also including the emotional intelligence, and then you'll have a range to better communicate. Yui. Yes, you also want to expose them to how to express yourself when you have different emotions, when the appropriate time is to express yourself around the right people. You want to make sure that you expose them to like when and how that should happen. And so this chart shows you the child in the middle. And then the next one, like it's a socialization chart. And so that the family is the next person the child socializes with, and their friends, their teachers, and then maybe their cousins, like distant family members, other community members as well. And then the outside circle is a stranger, somebody they don't know. And that's really important for them to be able to master a relationship and be able to socialize with different people and understand who they're close to, who they're not, who they can trust, so that's really important as far as communication goes. And so that's where emotional intelligence falls in. It helps to be able to, when you have that full communication access, so they can say I'm sad, and then you can ask them why, and they can say, oh, I'm sad because somebody stole my toy, or I'm happy because I passed my class with an A, and the parents can say, oh, I'm disappointed in you. Oh, and the child might say, "Why?" And they can say, "Oh, well, it's because you didn't do your homework." So there's that understanding as well when you have that communication back and forth. Again, children are like sponges. So yeah, definitely take advantage of that. And so Ando said that also shows circles of support who supports the child, and always a family in the front lines and the biggest role in the child's life. Yes, I agree with you. Perfect. Okay, so with empathy, oh, this is the key part to being able to understand your child. It's really important for you to check in with your child, see how they're doing, see how their day has been, just that, check in. Just see what your child likes. Maybe your child likes to draw. You can ask them about their art. Maybe they like sports. I mean, really anything. You can ask them about anything just to be able to communicate with them. Maybe ask them their thoughts, their opinions, really empower them, and just to have that daily interaction every day back and forth, just to make sure your child might understand, but they might not, and that's okay. You can just go back and forth, and that's where the child starts to have that connection with their parents, instead of that disconnect, and then they feel isolated, and when they're isolated, that's the red flag where depression might sink in, and the mental health might really affect the child. Being able to connect and express yourself really is beneficial. You said, yes, I agree. It's beneficial to be able to communicate with your parents, be able to self-regulate. If there's no communication, then there's maybe no self-regulation. I might impact the way that I communicate with other people. I might do something inappropriately. Might not be healthy for me. So it's very important for developing relationships. Let me give you an example. Like, growing up with deaf parents, ASL is my first language. And so my parents would say, "You're in trouble." And I would And I would say, "Why? What's wrong?" And it was because I didn't help clean, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And I did get mad, and my parents would say, "Okay, calm down," to learn, and they taught me how to calm down, and as I got older, I would get mad at my friends, and then I would, also know how to self-regulate as well. If I didn't know how to self-regulate, I would probably just get mad and just say whatever and hurt my friends, but because my parents taught me how to communicate and self-regulate, and they told me like what's appropriate, what's not. So I was able to pick up on social cues through my parents. So then I know how to handle myself with other people. So at first, I mean, I didn't learn my social skills from my family. I actually learned my social skills from my cousin. I would play with my cousins and they're hearing, and I would hear some things, and slowly, I was able to interact with other people, but my family really didn't teach me how to like use my voice or how to do this or how to practice different things. I really learned my social skills from my cousin. I was really behind. Um, it was really maybe elementary school. I started picking up social skills through my friends and through other people. And really, it is critical to have those social skills. Okay, let me ask you. I'm just wondering if your parents have any other children, if you have any hearing siblings, and you can go ahead and answer on the chat.
And we'll go ahead and do an interpreter switch. Okay. Okay. So I see some of you say that you have a hearing older son, hearing older sister. Okay. So when you communicate with your hearing children and your deaf children, do you communicate them at the same time? Are they similar ages? So for example, for your children and your deaf child, are you communicating the same content or are you communicating in different ways with the hearing versus your deaf child? Well, so I think it's more like, when your hearing child, do you talk to them as you would talk to your deaf child, or do you explain a little more in depth to your hearing child and you say less to your deaf child? We're just wondering what your experience has been. Okay, thank you, Noelle, for clarifying too. Okay, nice, great. Iwi. So my emphasis is just whether or not your child is deaf or hearing, it's very important that you're communicating the same content to each of them. So you're not communicating more for one child and less for the other. It's that equal communication. Noelle. Yeah, I couldn't have explained that better because I was a spoiled kid when I was growing up. I was the only one. So, and my deaf parents communicated with me. So I just want to make sure that children have full access to communication. A deaf child often will see siblings getting more information and they'll think, they're isolated, they're feeling ignored, and that can lead to anger and frustration, of course. And seem like you're treating the other children differently. So with that language acquisition, it's similar to they're taking in, they're learning, and it's a process. So just keep that in mind too, how you're addressing both children. Yes. Yes, and then Clara, it is really tough sometimes, if you have two boys and they both have special needs, especially different speech needs. And so just to keep in mind, yeah, of course it's sticky and to be motivated and to make sure that you're providing that equal access. So that's wonderful. And you're just doing your best. That's great. Yeah, that's really perfect. So yeah, it's just involving the child and they'll notice that as well. Yeah. Okay. So, for when you have a deaf child, what do you do as a parent? So you can collaborate and have different guidance. You can ask to make different choices for your child. Oftentimes, you won't know what choices to make. You'll want to watch facial expressions, make a lot of direct eye contact. In deaf culture, we're very visual. And so if somebody's not looking at me, I might think they're ignoring me. That's part of deaf culture. So you want to make sure to make that eye contact. It's very respectful. It shows you that you're listening to them. And then also just be patient in communication. And sometimes it's, you have to say the same thing over and over. If same like if a friend didn't understand, you have to repeat it sometimes. Just be patient and don't have your frustration or your emotions take over where you're showing that frustration to your child. And then also just affirmative talk. So just commending them, providing affirmations, just being really honest with an open dialogue. If you have any, ask open-ended questions. Don't always say, yes or no questions. Just open up so that they're able to communicate more with that open question. Well, yeah, so these are all very, very important. And that kid has its own personality and its own thought process, him or her feelings, and they want to relate to their parents. And so to be able to have that collaborative, which is a huge word, that collaborating empowers the child. It gives them self-esteem. It lets them think positively about themselves, and it's also gives them that independence and autonomy. So when they're out in the world with adults, they'll know what to do and they'll feel confident in their decision making. So if a kid who, isn't able to ask questions, doesn't have anything explained to them, if they're just given really short answers with decisions that are made for them, and without any questions, then they start thinking, trying to learn what those independent skills are, and there's gaps. They don't know that. So this time is really critical that you teach your child these kinds of social emotional skills. Parents are often scared to ask their deaf kid to repeat themselves, or the kid will lose patience with them, like, I just said that. So we know that happens too, and that's of course very typical of the age. And so just be patient and don't assume when you're asking questions, because that can lead to misunderstandings, added frustration, stress, and anger. So we want to avoid that for our kids. Okay. Okay, so what parents should not do, these are just some warnings. So don't assume communication. Sometimes you'll see a kid and they'll be nodding like, but it may not necessarily mean that they know what you've said. They might just, they might be afraid of reprimand, or they just want to keep going with their day. So don't judge necessarily if they are nodding. Or they'll say, I know, I know, I know. So just make sure that communication is actually taking place. And then don't make assumptions. Sometimes, there are misunderstandings in communication. You do have to clarify. You may not know what something means. And so just helping the child be able to communicate their own skills. And then also, if you're not really sure, don't say, I know, just be honest with your child and they'll be honest with you. So if you don't understand, say, I don't understand, can you please say that again? Can you be more clear? Can you describe it to me? And that will lead to better self-esteem and better socialization. And then this is kind of what don't tell your child these things. So, and I've experienced all of them. If something's really important, something's going on, and as a deaf child, you miss something, the parent goes, I'll tell you later. And then I just feel ignored, like I need to understand this now. Another one is it doesn't matter, or somebody voiced something on the intercom or something, and you're like, oh no, never mind. It's not really important. But we have a right to know of what's going on and the information around us. Also, the answer of nothing, it's not important. So same as if a hearing person, you're hearing everything, and whether or not it's important, we have limited language access. And so regardless of if it's important or not, we still want to know. We want to identify what it is, and we make that determination about whether or not it's important. Noelle, communication is not one way, right? It's a two-way street. It's back and forth. And so that is a really important thing to keep in mind. With children, when you say, oh, I'll tell you later, like at the dinner table or something like that, kids will be eating dinner with the family. And if you don't know sign and you're all talking and chatting, and then one deaf kid is eating, can't hear what's going on, can't hear what anybody's saying, and then they go, hey, what did you say? Everybody's laughing. Oh, what did they say? I'll tell you later. That happens often. And then does that kid ever understand what happened later? Many times the parents forget to say what happened later. They just feel left out of their own family. So to make sure to be very inclusive, especially at the dinner table when you're getting your family together, try your best to all sign. Doesn't have to be perfect by any means. You can use gestures, but that includes the child, and it's not acting like they're invisible. They're there, they're at the table. So, don't say, I'll tell you later. Because regardless if it's important, the child feels like, oh, it's not important to tell me because I'm, the deaf child. You want to make sure that they're included, and be sensitive to that as well. So this is just some information, again, to know and keep in mind, so that you're all on the same page, and there's not, so that you're respecting them for who they are. I wanted to add an experience that I had in school. So when I was in school, again, like I said, that I didn't have an interpreter, and oftentimes they would, make announcements or plans or like a short field trip or something like that. And so, kids would go get their backpacks on. I'm playing or whatever, and I've missed what was said. And so people go, oh, that's fine. I'll just stay. And then, oh, I got to bring my backpack, and realize that there was a field trip. And everybody knew except for me. Even the teachers knew, oh gosh, oh, sorry, we were sorry, we didn't know. And I was playing, but I felt very left out behind, and no, that was embarrassing. Noelle. Yeah. So for kids to feel included anytime, any place, anywhere, we really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. So anger and breaking down and feelings of hurt. So remember, that feeling of anger, you want to leave some time to de-escalate the situation, with the kid calm down, and give some personal space so that they're able to be safe and, again, de-escalate. When that happens, make sure that you might feel also kind of tense, but say, I'm listening, I'm hearing you. What do you want to say? You might want to grab them, or, but it's very important that you allow them to calm down. And, they're a person, they have emotions, just like adults have emotions. So you want to respect that. And then also just try to emphasize that I'm here for you, I support you. we want to make sure that you're safe. You can say anything, and I want to know what you're feeling. And sometimes it could be physical touch that makes the child feel better. If they want to hug, then you say, do you want to hug? You could hug them. If that's something that they're going to accept in that moment, just to show that you're support. Well, yeah. And then again, this is a part of emotional intelligence. And so for parents to work with their children to feel like, when children experience these emotions like anger and stress and frustration, like, what did you do as a child? How do you communicate that with a deaf child? So if they're angry, can you talk about it? Maybe they're signing really fast and they're frustrated or they don't understand, and you want to encourage them. Sometimes you might want to grab their hands because they're signing so fast, but that is just going to lead to anger and more frustration to be held back or restrained from signing. So just allowing them to express themselves, same as you, if you were going to talk louder or talk faster when you're angry, that's a deaf child will sign bigger or sign, you just have to tell them, okay, calm down, let's discuss it, let's sign it. And so also positive body touch, meaning that, if you're mad or upset or sad, you may want to hug. Some kids may want to, but a lot of kids don't. So you want to agree and you ask first, do you want a hug? And then they might say yes. They have to accept that affection. Okay, so this says fact. Deafness does not cause mental illness. So with mental health development, there's various factors relating to communication deprivation. So there's, different barriers, lack of social services, societal family pressure, that ability to self-regulate. And then also, if you don't have those developmental skills to be able to self-regulate and to know your emotions, to know that you're sad, to know that you're nervous, if you haven't been taught that, then it can lead to behavioral issues or substance abuse or mental health stressors, things like that. It can affect the body. And so, it affects your heart, your stomach, it's a cycle. And if there's no support and there's no communication, there are many factors that can affect that. So it's not having anything to do with deafness necessarily. It's just you want to be sure to address those communication issues and the socialization issues. And if they don't have that, that can lead to serious things when they're adults, and those kind of problems build upon each other. So you want to make sure now to take advantage, sign with your kids, socialize your kids, expose your kids early so that they have less chance of experiencing some of these negative factors later on, because we don't want that. No kids want these. Also, with deaf kids, they may experience bullying, in school like other kids, and they might experience some bullying at some point in their lives. And so that could be, with that emotional support, that family boundary, like the center, that image I showed you before. So if you have that support, you have that socialization, and you have the support from your family, you'll be fine when you experience some of those things. So we just want to emphasize that deafness is not a cause of mental illness. Yui? Okay. So, oh, hold on. Wait, before you go on, what do you think? I want to ask the audience, which picture do you think is Noelle and which picture is Yui? What do you think? Left or right? Noelle. Yeah. Well, let's do either left or right, or number one or number two. Or maybe how about this? Black and white picture. Who's the black and white picture and who's the color picture? Go ahead and write in the chat. So you think that Noelle's saying I'm the color and Yui's black and white? Okay. Oh, Noelle, which one do you think is me? Noelle, do you think, okay, we black and white, good. Okay, I just wanted to ask what you guys thought first. And you're thinking that I'm the color, but really it's the opposite. So remember that I was adopted. And so my parents uh, adopted. So I'm actually the one in the black and white picture, a Korean American. You can even see the little flag I'm holding. That's me. And when I came to the US, became a citizen and was naturalized. So, and then Yui is in the colorful picture. Yui, yes. Yeah. So I am in the colorful picture, and my family, I see, you can see my uh, parents, my grandpa. So I'm in the middle in this bright red. You can see my cousins and their twins. And then my parents, and then they're all hearing. And so just to kind of explain how I grew up, with my grandparents didn't live with me. And at the time, my parents were deaf, and so they did sign, but they didn't support sign language necessarily, my grandparents. So when I was born deaf, they wanted me to speak. And so I went to speech training pretty early on with different teachers and resources, and was separated. So, um, being able to try and socialize. And when I was about 2 to 5, I was separated from my parents for, we'd have different weekly visits. And then my mom wasn't really comfortable with them, with other kids. So it was kind of a weird situation where my mom, again, she said the word for shrimp, and in sign language, it looks like this. And my mom, who's visiting every week, makes all this food. And then my mom does that. And so my mom's like, I don't understand what you mean by this letter, like the letter X. And so I had seen, I felt like even though I was responding, I started crying because I'm not really, I was trying to show a picture. Had signed it incorrectly, and for the sign for shrimp. And then my mom finally understood what I had wanted. I wanted to eat shrimp. And so that was that first time of me trying to express myself and what I needed, and having that misunderstanding. So being able to sign still versus, speaking when I was 5, I ended up getting sick, and then I got back with my family, and yeah. And then I had to like hide my hands. I wasn't able to sign. If I did, my parents were saying, you have to speak. And so they didn't realize that I was so skilled using my eyesight, and so being able to take in that way and visualize everything. So meaning when I was about 2 to, even undergrad, I just spoke, and we had some little home signs like bed or sleep or eat, but very just simple things that I would use with my parents. And there really wasn't any deeper intellectual conversation more than that. And I didn't have that with them. So in high school, okay.
So in high school, I was able to, I started picking up more sign. And then in my undergrad, I moved to a different city. I studied more there, and I would video chat with my mom, and we would just look at each other. We didn't sign, so I didn't really feel close to my parents. So at that time, I decided to socialize with deaf people and learn Chinese Sign Language. And then I started talking with my parents, and I felt like the communication did start improving. And so at that point, I started to feel closer to my parents. So I just, it was, I didn't want to have any like negative a point of view on being able to communicate. I just use whatever way I could, and so I know that some people or some parents think that signing's ugly, they feel shame, but now they don't, I mean, really, there's nothing right or wrong. I mean, it's just important to be able to communicate. So that is my story and how I learned sign language. And, if your deaf child doesn't want to sign, don't force them, just help them understand the concept. I have a So there's a homework word called concept. So in elementary school in first grade, then the first day, and for that next month, I was given homework, but I had no idea what homework actually meant. I just went home and played, and then I'd go to school, and then I noticed that some of the students were handing in books and papers, and I didn't understand, and I just kind of was copying the behavior, and my teacher noticed that I wasn't doing my homework and asked me, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. And so they explained it to me that homework means that you take your schoolwork from school and you take it to home and do it at home, and then you take it back to the teacher. So once I learned that, I had a better understanding of the concept. Before that, I had no idea because nobody taught me, what that actually was. My parents, my family, they just say, "Hey, go to school and listen to your teacher," but they didn't give me any more details. So it's really important to be able to expose the concept to your child. Sometimes they feel like they don't know what's going on and be traumatized by it, and I was afraid of homework at one point, but I had gotten over that. Thank you very much for sharing your story. So, Chinese Sign Language. What's the sign for shrimp? That's shrimp in Chinese Sign Language. You just don't move your hand, just like this. Okay, and so what does this mean? That means F. Or wait, 9, the number 9. Okay, so I just did that sign, didn't know what it meant. Okay. So yes, there's a big difference with the different sign languages. And so with my experience, my parents are deaf, so ASL was my first language growing up, and but I also did observe both my parents, but my mother, she has a different background. She went to oral school. She learned sign language at an older age, around 17, 18 years old. And her communication style was different. And she would sign, she was oral, she would move her lips. And then my dad, he signed ASL, went to deaf school, he went to Gallaudet University. My mom did not. And so there was a difference. And so, like, when we're communicating, my mom would misunderstand me because I would sign fast. And my mom would say, "Oh, whoa, 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 slow down." And I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute here." And so I would become frustrated. So I would communicate with my dad, and we got really close. We were really close. I was daddy's girl. We used ASL. And then as I got older, I made some realizations, that my mom's communication style is different, just as my father's is as well. So I was able to accept that. Of course, I love both my parents and really care for them. With my mom, she went to an oral school, and with her family, her mom's side did not support sign language. They wanted her to be oral. And then on my dad's side, the grandparents were oral, would only speak orally as well. And so they were really obsessed with teaching, my mom how to speak. And then they were like, they tried to say apple. And they would hold an apple and say, "Oh, use this or say this," And if I said it right, or I'm sorry, me, I was saying this. And so if I said it right, I would be able to, eat an apple. So, I wasn't really that close to my grandparents, but on my dad's side of the family, some of them signed. And it was because my my dad's father was a coda, a child of a deaf adult, so he already knew sign language. So they were really comfortable signing. So my dad was really close to his own father, and I felt really close to them as well. So it's really important to recognize the differences in approach and the way you communicate, you sign, and if you're oral, just to have that communication access. Oh, and I just thought of one thing. And so my father was telling me this story about when he was little that we wanted to eat something white. and it was like a hose. It was a white hose. And so my dad's mother did not understand him. White hose, white hose. What is that? He would sign white hose. And so the communication wasn't all there. And so they went to this grocery store and she asked him, like, what do you want? And so he pointed to it. And what was it? It was spaghetti. It was pasta. And he was calling it a white hose. So then, they explained to him and what it is and how to sign it. And so so with that emotional range, it helps with your to have that emotional range, that helps you have a connection with your parents. And my father loved to debate politics, talk about sports. I mean, he really just liked to talk about a lot of things like technology, and I learned a lot. But my mother, she was more into gardening and just and like to clean the house. My mom was a housewife and my father was a chemist. And he was proficient at math and I was not, so he helped me. So, between my two parents, I learned my social skills, and then I did go to deaf school until I was in 8th grade. And then transferred to a half deaf, half hearing school. And then once I went to high school, I was fully mainstreamed. And so, I definitely noticed similarities with my peers at the deaf school. And then when I went to the hearing school, I was the only deaf person. So I did feel isolated and left out, and that's not a good feeling. And so that's where the support system comes in. It's really important. Okay, so next slide. Okay, color meditation. This is your thing. Yes, it is my thing. Oh, I love this so much. It's one tool for all of you to learn with your children. And that can apply to yourself, to your children. Really, if you're feeling angry, stressed out, happy, whatever, this color meditation is very valuable. So I think it'd be great for all of you to take advantage of this and just, go ahead and we'll get started with it. Just sit there, put your feet on the ground, and we'll relax. And so, feelings. Earlier we had that feelings chart and there was a huge range of emotions, quite a variety like here. So you could use this chart, use this picture chart and show your child. You can ask them, how are you feeling today? Like if the child says they're feeling sad, okay, say they're sad. And so encourage them to go ahead and pick one color that describes their feeling. Let's say they're happy. And then you ask them, so what's your color for happiness? And so go ahead and pick out one color. So, everybody's color of happiness could be different. So, Yui, what's your color? My color is blue. How about all of you? What is your happy color? Green, purple, any more? Yellow, pink, blue. My happy color is aqua, aqua blue, like the ocean. That really makes me happy. Just like right here. See, this makes me happy. It's blue. My glasses, they're blue. So that's my positive color. So I want all of you, like some of you were saying purple, green, yellow, blue. So I want you to remember that color, remember that happy color. And so when you think of that color, make sure you associate that with happy. And I want you to hold on to that. Remember that. So now I want you to pick one color that describes a negative feeling. Let's say you're feeling negative, any type of negative feeling. Say you're feeling sad. Let's say, for instance, I'm sad. And the color for Yui is gray. So what is everybody else's color? Yellow, black, anybody else? Black, gray, purple. Okay. So you have your happy color. So now we have your negative color. And so, I did mention my happy color is aqua, and my negative color is red, dark red for me. So you have both of them in mind. And so I want you to visualize your body relaxing, put your feet on the ground, just relax, get comfortable. So it's up to you if you want to close your eyes or open them. you know, Deaf people typically leave their eyes open. It's just important to have the mind body connection. If you're just busy, you want to put all that your mind's running busy. You want to put all that busyness into a little box and set it off to a side. We'll go ahead and visit that box in a little bit. So, right now, I just want you to think about the two colors, blue and red. Whatever your colors are, think of those colors. So, go ahead and think about that. And so, when you're breathing, maybe your body's all feeling negative, negative color from head to toe. Like for me, maybe I would be all dark red and I just want to get that out of my body. And so you want to like maybe visualize like an aura or maybe like a fuel. And so what you want to do is you want to pull that happy color inside. So how do you do that? You take a deep breath, you breathe it into your belly and breathe out. And so when you're breathing in, I want you to visualize like you're sucking in your happy color. My happy color is blue. So I'm breathing in my happy colors. I'm counting 1, 2, 3. And then I blow out my dark red. And so you continue that rotation, until your whole body is totally full of your happy color. It just takes time though. I just want you to go ahead and think about it. Think about your positive color. Bring in your positive color, get rid of your negative color. Either you fill all the way up like a gas tank, however you want to envision it. So we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. We're going to do one more. Inhale and exhale. And so the dark red color is out, and your happy color should be filled from head to toe. Mine is blue, blue and shining. You just keep going until you feel complete with your happy color. Okay, so you feel so zen now. That's a really important practice. You can always switch it up anytime. You can switch the colors. You can think of your positive color and it can be happy, excited. I mean, whatever is positive, you can pick one emotion and then pick a color that corresponds with that yellow, white, red, black, whatever you'd like to choose. Apply it to the positive color. And then, just like with the positive, you do that with the negative. You pick an emotion, you label with a color, and then, that helps you pull it in and pull it out. It's a visual tool for your children, because, you tell your kid to calm down or meditate or breathe, and the kid's like, what? How do I do that? If you want maybe to explain it to them in color, maybe that'll help visualize it. Visualize bringing in positive and letting go of the negative. So that's a suggestion you can use for yourself or with your children. That's a tool for you to have in your toolbox. I hope you're feeling relaxed now. Oh, no, well, I like your colors of meditation. It's really beneficial for me as well, I realized. Okay, so we're going to talk about tips now. You can apply those tips at any time. It just kind of depends on, the moment. So, first of all, like how do parents learn how to communicate with their children? Let's say it kind of depends on the different on your children and what colors they prefer, and how you interact with them. Let's say that you don't even know what to do. You can gesture to start out. You can offer pictures up if you can't communicate with sign just yet. You can, you know write on a piece of paper. You can use different tools to be able to communicate when you first start out. You know, you can see the different expressions on your child's face, happy, sad, and maybe you can even model that as well so the children know how to show those emotions as well. And it's always good to ask your child how they're doing. If they're feeling happy, what kind of happy things are you experiencing? Or maybe they're frustrated. Maybe you want to ask them why they're frustrated, just to try to initiate that conversation. Like Noah was just mentioning, like you have that emotion chart. Sometimes, you don't know how to sign the word, or, you can just show them the picture. You can find the picture that matches their emotion on their face. And then you can work from there and teach them what the word means. And then you can learn you guys can figure out how to sign it and go from there.
We'll do an interpreter switching. For IEPs, individualized education plans, also, is it ADA? Yes, Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA was established in 1990, and so it requires different access for deaf children. Also, IEPs, those again, individualized education plans, allow the deaf student different things in school. Maybe they need an interpreter, maybe they need closed captioning services, or maybe they need a one-on-one tutor. So it's a different avenue to provide support. A lot of parents don't know what's available at an IEP, and so and that they even have a right to certain services. So some people think, an interpreter might be too expressive, and so they would prefer someone, they don't understand that there's body shifting, and that's facial expressions is a huge part of that. So some people think that could be a negative to have an interpreter in a classroom. Everybody would be watching. And so, but it's really for clarification. You need to see those facial expressions and body movements to help understand the grammar and the syntax and to know what's going on. And so, in school, if they don't have certain services or accommodations, their grades could go down. And they could also, you could always ask, do you feel like you need an interpreter in school? Do you feel frustrated in school? Are you understanding? And so that IEP is to provide those rights for the student. Another tip would be visual tools, visual aids, different things, pictures and drawings. You can, again, just use pen and paper, like the emotional chart we showed you before, to get students to be able to express how they're feeling. Another tip is to use video relay services. And for deaf people, they prefer to use, video phones. It's easier to call with a video phone and use an interpreter if you're going to order food or something like that. Or maybe you lost your bank card or something, and so you have to go through that. But it's nice to be able to use a video phone. And so people think, it's you could just text it, but we have texting as a deaf person, and we also have a video phone if we want to call and use sign language to communicate through an interpreter with hearing people. And of course, we also will use text messaging. A new app is called Wavelo, and I don't really know much about that. Well, I'll take over and explain. So Wavelo this is a sign, it looks like a wave, and that's through Sorensen, and it's an app on the phone. So when you call, the interpreter will pop up, same as you see the interpreter here in the screen. So the hearing person could call and also see the interpreter on the screen. So it's a video relay service. And oftentimes the hearing person can't see the deaf person. There's not that ability to do that, and you can't see the interpreter. So this way, all parties involved can see, and it's a better form of communication in some ways. So with Wavelo or VRS, I can go ahead and spell it. Wavello. Yeah. So, some people may not know sign, or but you can go ahead and use VRS or Wavelo and for your communication needs. We also, you can always let.
Disculpe, ¿me podrían repetir el nombre de la aplicación?
Oh, hold on a second. Oh, sorry, just this interpreter. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay. Yeah, so to know that you have those different tech tools to communicate with people, it's not just the phone. And some people didn't even know, that you had that. There's other ways to communicate with deaf people. Okay, so the next one is observe the child's behavior. So, with a deaf child, to have full access with their parents, it's often limited. And so you may notice that their behavior is off or they're avoiding, they're maybe in their room with the door closed, or they're not, maybe they're very quiet and you want to ask, what happened? Is there anything you want to share with me? So always ask. Modeling and also role playing. That's just one way where you can, like I had mentioned before, when you're socializing with other people, you pick up on those skills. And so often people don't know, like sorry or thank you, you don't know some of that stuff. So you can role play. Hand me that. Oh, thank you. Oops, sorry. And you show what it is to do that with another person. And then also learning how those social skills will help with them with other children too. So just listening to your intuition is the last tip on the slide. And I'm not quite sure how to explain it necessarily, but maybe Noelle, you could go into detail. Sure. So intuition, yeah, most of the time you're going to be right. If you feel you have that sense of intuition, that's that calling inside. And if you feel like something might be off with your deaf child, check in with them. Definitely check in with them and say, hey, I'm noticing this, don't ignore it if you really feel in your gut that something could be wrong. And also I wanted to add about the IEP meetings. It's really important for the school system that you document the IEP, and deaf students, will have their services, their priority, their first disability is that deafness. So that allows them to get the accommodations that they need in the IEP. And so you want to put it as their primary, not their secondary for deafness. So make sure you have in an IEP that deafness is their primary disability, and then they'll be able to have those accommodations. And so like interpreters, captioning, other accommodation that students often really need in the educational setting. And then also staff support and different advocacy. You can teach the child, what they need in school. And that they can also communicate those needs. Mental health too, mental health services or counseling can also be added to an IEP. If you have other special accommodations in mind as well, also put those down in the IEP meeting so that that student can have access. Would you say anything that is needed on an IEP? If you don't put something down, they won't include it. So it's kind of a learn as you go, but make sure you put those accommodations down in the IEP so your child can get them. So the tools we mentioned, of course, sign language is very, very, very important, but it's most important that you're communicating with your child. You could communicate through artwork, through pictures, through dolls. You could show hurt where and then point at the doll's head or their elbow or their leg and make those distinctions. You can, of course, write back and forth. You can show, that emotional chart and see how they're feeling, and they will take in all those different modes of communication. They are a visual learner as a deaf child. So these tips and what UA just mentioned too about the role play, The mirroring is a huge piece. So whatever parents do, kids will watch and copy, and they will pick it up. So same like kids watch TV, they take that in and they often copy those behaviors too. So, if you might say hit and then hurt. So not okay, wrong. And then they'll what do? You say sorry, and then have them say sorry, and then you say thank you. Don't hit me again, that hurt. So just that communication that they know something's wrong, that they hurt someone. That's important too, to relay. I also forgot to mention too, with another slide, with children being angry and frustrated, please maintain that eye contact. If a child is 2 or 3, the eye contact means that you have to bend on the ground and be able to look them in the eye. If you're looking up above them, they're going to be more resistant and even more angry. So really come down to their level, and so you can look and maintain eye contact. Okay, I'll give you a minute to read this. Yeah, so research has shown, especially with just the year of 2020, with language and communication, direct but also indirect, for deaf and hard of hearing children, they can take in and they internalize that. So we really want to foster that development. Child development includes socialization, it includes emotional development, it includes language development, intellectual intelligence. All of those things are included in their health. And so it will also reduce the risk of having any kind of mental health issues later down the line. So with stress, especially the stress of every single day, it can really impact your physical body and it can hurt. And so we want to lessen that for children. So just like the year 2020 has shown us, it can be very stressful. So these are some resources for you to peruse, and they are local and national. They're at the state level as well. And so just some ideas to share with you for youth and family services. And of course, you're welcome to share them with one another. They're so wonderful. And they're through, we have counseling services through DCS. We have one-on-one, we have individual groups, or you can have family counseling as well with your children and adults. And Yui and I are both counselors. We do art therapy. I'm an art therapist. And so we provide many different services, and some are listed here. So deaf family therapy is one of them, ASL app to learn ASL. And so you can go ahead and look through these, and they're all shared through youth and family services. Also, if you do need counseling services, feel free to get in touch with our new director, Salah Davison, and just go ahead and send an email with a counseling request, and we will be able to provide some services. Also, ASL VAT is another great resource you can use to learn ASL, yes. Okay, so now we want to open it up for any questions. Thank you so much for your time, and would love to answer any burning questions. Yui, do you think we should go ahead and do gallery view, or either way? Okay, I'll go ahead and take that down. And oh, perfect. And okay, hi again. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and write them in the chat. We'll address them, but I wanted to take a moment to thank you so much. Thank Noel. Thank you, Yui, for being here today. We have learned so much. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, I expect to see you again in a couple weeks. That'll be February 19th, and we have a great workshop as well with John O'Loughlin, and he will explain his workshop, how to maintain and really learn and teach your deaf children. So we'll go through that as well. Okay. Any last things before with Youth and Family Services? We have a lot that we offer. We have a Facebook page. You're always welcome, YFS at DCS. You can look online at dcsdeafcommunityservices.org for new upcoming events. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. You have a great night. Noelle, again, if